Let's talk about all things happening in the world of sports. From the latest Saints moves to all that happens in college football, along with in-depth interviews and much more. It's time for Sports Chat with George Faust.
All right, guys, welcome in to another edition of Sports Chat. Thanks so much for being with us, and we are honored and pleased to have Coach Louis Cook with us of the Notre Dame Pioneers. He's the head coach of the football program. He's also the athletic director, wears a whole lot of hats, I'm sure, more than we can address and talk about in one little sitting here for sure, because he's been doing it for so long. We also are, you might notice that we have some new digs here at KLFY. We have a new studio that was put together by our crack team, and they've done a great job. And so we're excited to be the inaugural show to use this studio. So looking forward to many more shows here in this studio. It should be exciting as we get things rolling on this edition of Sports Chat. And Coach Cook, with that, I say thank you for coming in. Appreciate you. Anytime I've ever needed you throughout my career, you've been there. You're a gentleman and a scholar for taking some time to talk with us.
Well, I appreciate it, George, especially being here on the inaugural chat in the new studio.
Yeah.
But no, it's my pleasure to be here, and you as well has done a lot for us, but also for high school sports, and obviously that's really close to my heart.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I appreciate all that you've done, and I don't mind coming in and having anytime we get the opportunity to talk, especially sports. I'm all for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of sports, when you look at what high school football is right around the corner, I mean, you're about to a lot of colleges have already kind of started their spring ball and all that stuff, but you guys are that's looming for high school football as you guys get ready for the upcoming season. Tell me a little bit about that preparation as you get ready for what is a new football season.
Right. Yeah, spring training, though, for most of the schools that opt to do spring training, because now several years ago they gave you a couple of options about spring. You could do one early, say January, February, or you could opt out of spring altogether and then have an extra week of pads in August.
Oh, gotcha.
And but the majority of schools that are going to do spring training usually do it towards the end of April and obviously the first couple of weeks in May, and that's always been ours. You get 10 days in pads for spring training, like I said, unless you opt out and want to do it in the fall, get that extra week in the fall. I've always kept it traditional time as baseball's winding down, track is finishing up. We try to get in, what we can. We stopped doing a spring game. They still allow you to play someone in the spring, but I haven't done it for quite some time. Yeah. Baseball, we have a lot of guys that cross over baseball and football.
Yeah.
So, we hope we don't get them very early. That means that they've gone far into the playoffs. And, we've been fortunate to win a couple of state championships not that far back. So, you get those guys 1 week. By the time they get done with that, you're in your last week of spring.
Right.
So, but we are getting ready. We're going to do what we can. I like it because it gives us a chance to maybe get a few questions answered about some of the younger guys coming up.
Right.
And when we stopped playing a spring game years back, it really worked out well because I caught myself getting to spend a lot more time with the younger guys because we weren't trying to get ready for a game.
Right. Sure.
So
Yeah.
Took the pressure off a little bit.
Makes a lot of sense.
So we were getting a lot more reps with the twos and the threes and the younger guys, which, to me, that's what spring probably should be for anyhow because, the veteran guys coming back, 10 days and it's hard to get 10 days in, to be honest, I'm not going to go 5 days a week in the spring. I don't like to hit 3 days in a row, nowadays. So we kind of spread it out a little bit. And if we can get, 8 good days, sometimes, we feel pretty good about that. So, but right now, we're just coming off of the Easter break. The baseball regular season ended yesterday. Softball ends today. So those playoffs will be starting at the end of this week. District track meets are next week. which leads into regionals and then the state meet. I think it's May 7th and 8th at LSU. So, yeah, springtime entries for tennis have to regionals have to be in. So there's a lot in the spring. There's a lot that's going on, but at the same time, we're back our week off for Easter, and back in the weight room and continuing to train and get ready for our spring practice, which we'll go at in a couple of weeks.
Nice. And so you were talking about some of those baseball guys. Baseball shape is different than football shape for sure. And then even for basketball shape, I know when Parker was playing, it was like that transition back to football from basketball was difficult.
You play 12, 13, 14 football games, you think you're in shape. Get on that basketball court and you find it's a lot different type of conditioning.
Right.
You huffing and puffing 3 trips down the court. So,
for me, it's a half trip, Coach. What are we talking about here?
That's a half more than I can make now. But it is different, and like I said, we have a big crossover. The last baseball championship we won a few years ago, the final game, the championship game, we had 13 players participate in the game, whether
that were
DH,
football players.
whether it was DHing or pinch running or whatever. All 13 were football players. So
okay.
We're gonna have quite a few out until baseball's over with, but that's fine.
Hopefully that's a long run for
exactly.
you. Right.
I want to. We want to go as far as we can every chance, and so we're hoping that we can make another run along those lines, and but we'll try to get in 8-9 days if we can between the last week of April and the first 2 weeks of May.
Gotcha. And so I know so when you look at how the season kind of played out last year, man, you guys got to the state championship, literally one play away from making it back to the Dome for I think the first time since 2018.
Right.
And so one time you told me the stat, it was a while back, if you ever played football at Notre Dame under Coach Cook, you had played in the Dome. And it's a phenomenal stat. And I think a couple of years ago, unfortunately, that kind of fell by the wayside. But still an impressive stat, Coach, is the fact that if you've ever played for you've played in a state semifinal as well. That's an unbelievable stat because I don't even think Jim Hightower can say that, or I mean maybe JT can over at Curtis, but that's an impressive stat.
First time we got to the championship game was 2000.
Right.
So the freshmen of 2000, because those freshmen that stay out and practice with the varsity once the freshman season's over, I tell them I can't take you to all the road playoff games, but if we do get to New Orleans, everyone will make that trip. So in 2000, we had several freshmen that were on that trip to New Orleans. And I think it wasn't until 2020 or 2021 because in 18, we played, that's our last trip to New Orleans. So the freshmen on that team in 18,
right?
So they went 3 more years, and that it ended when we didn't make,
that class
the one that came in, the freshman of 19,
right?
Yeah, they didn't get to go.
Gotcha.
So but it was a good run where if you made at least one trip, to New Orleans.
Well, and still, like I'm saying, the semifinal thing is pretty impressive too, because last year you guys made it to the semifinal, and the year before that, Parker was a freshman, and you guys had made it to my son was a freshman. He made it that year. Y'all were at St. Charles, and that was the extra point that came up short. 2-point conversion at the end of the game at St. Charles. Man, it seemed like you guys had to play St. Charles every year. That was a brutal little stretch right there.
In 2012, I think it was, which was the first time we met, and it seemed like we had 3 or 4 years in a row where we were running into those guys.
Yeah.
They were on their run, and so again, George. In most of those games, it's a play here or there, just like it was this year. We we're in overtime with Calvary Baptist, and they scored. They had the ball first, and we blocked the extra point, so a touchdown and an extra point, and we're playing for the championship, and we had fourth down around about the 2-yard line and came up a yard short. So, yeah, it's been good. You got to give a lot of credit to the kids that have come through there. The hard work that they put in. That's the difference. That they're willing to give. To give of themselves that much and to last that long, because I've had coaches ask me, say, Coach, I've gone 14 to 15 weeks from it. How do you do? Well, because they continue to strength train during the season. Because you're gonna lose. Most of the guys at the end of the season, they're gonna weigh less than they weighed when the season started. Because that's a grind. You're going.
Using up a lot of calories.
You figure if you make it to the finals, that's 18 weeks, of practice. And but yeah, it's. I guess that's part of the reason why I'm still around, because they make it interesting for us, and they gonna push as hard as they can, and you want to. I've had people ask me, say, Coach, what more, are you trying? I said, it's not what I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
I'm doing it because I want to see those guys.
Yeah.
The times that we've, like this year, I was pulling so hard to try to get there for the guys that haven't been there. That's really what it's all about. Coaches that, they're looking for their first time to have a chance for that championship as well. So, that's we've been blessed to have a lot of those good experiences. Of whatever it is you're trying to go for. But
you bring up a good point, and I actually have it written down over here too in my list of topics to talk about. That's like a novel in and of itself, because of the contributions that you've been. Everybody always asks me, you know a lot about Notre Dame. You know this, that. When's Coach Cook going to retire? And I'm like, I don't think he is. Yeah. I don't think he is. I don't think that's happening. Let's put that rumor to rest. You're not retiring this year, right?
Not for this year. Yeah. No, I'll be out for spring training in a couple of weeks, okay. And I'm committed. At this point in the year, it kind of be tough, to back out right now. You got everything ready to go, and as long as Miss Faye's healthy and my health holds up, I'm looking forward to another year. Now, it pretty much is year to year right now.
Right.
Now, we're going to share the athletic directed duties next year. I'll do the football, get all the operation things that you have to do for football to roll, and but once football's over, I'll be around, but I'm going to back out some of the other. We're going to start spreading it out a little bit as far as who oversees basketball and softball and that type of stuff. So
that's pretty fair. I mean, I think you've earned that, Coach.
Miss Faith deserves it more than I do.
Right, sure enough. The coaches' wives definitely are saints.
She's been such a trooper for all these years, so it's time to, I guess, he's back from that a little bit. Although I'll admit if I'm not at Notre Dame, I don't know that I'm still doing this. The support is so good there, and such a Joy, you experience it's just a family, and everybody pitches in to help, and although they never, I'm sure, don't agree with everything that we do, they're still there to support all the kids and help us to achieve the things that we want for those kids to be able those experiences that they're looking for.
Yeah. Look, so we got a lot to talk about. I'm glad we touched on that a little bit. We have your book here. It's not, you didn't write it. Mr. Galen White wrote it. It's called Coach of a Lifetime. We're going to talk some more about this book coming out. It's been out, I think we figured out 3 years, 2023 is the copyright. I don't know when I got my copy, but 2023 is when the book was copyrighted. So we'll talk more about that. You can get a copy of this too. Mr. Galen would be more than happy to take orders, I'm sure. But we'll talk about that. Talk about what that process was like, having a book written about you. Because if you've ever met a humble person, if you look it up in the dictionary of humble, that's Coach Cook right there. So in the book, actually, they talk about one coach who called you Jesus as a football coach. What was that?
Yeah, I think Coach Crochet.
Kurt Crochet used to coach at Lowerville.
Right.
But what he said, he's Jesus in a coach's.
Yeah, with a whistle or something.
Oh, with the whistle, yeah. So Coach Cook, very humble guy, but we're going to still talk about Coach of a Lifetime, that book coming up. We'll do all of that. We'll take a break. We'll come back, and we'll have much more with Coach Louis Cook, the head coach of the Notre Dame Pios.
Sports Chat with George Faust.
Welcome back into Sports Chat. Coach Louis Cook is here. He's the head coach, athletic director at Notre Dame High School in Crowley, Acadia Parish. And Coach, a couple of years ago, you had a guy following you around. I remember being on the sideline shooting the games and stuff, and I was like, man, who's that guy following Coach Cook and following he's said it was Mr. Galen White, and he put together this book called Coach of a Lifetime. And it's a really cool story about how that name came about. But basically, this book it chronicles your life as a coach and beyond, with a lot of different stories about you growing up and why you became a coach and who you influenced. And I think there's some really cool stories in here that are some of my favorite. Have to deal with Jake Delhomme. And then Orlando Thomas. Both of those are my two kind of favorite running themes throughout the book. Tell me a little bit about what it was like to have Mr. Galen follow you around and get this and put this book together.
Right. Well, Galen lives in Kingsport, Tennessee, and of course he grew up in Los Angeles, California. You wonder how did the guy get to Crowley, Louisiana? But,
right.
He was in the corporate world. He wrote, was a speech writer for CEOs and worked for several major companies, Goodyear Tire and Rubber, Eastman Chemical, and settled in Kingsport, Tennessee. And when he retired, he began writing books. And he had written 5 books prior to this book, and they were all dealt with baseball. But his 5th book dealt with the Evangeline League, which was a minor league organization for professional baseball, and Crowley had a team, the Crowley Millers. Right. This was in the 50s, and in his research, he found that Crowley drew 100,000 spectators 3 years in a row. Wow. At Miller Stadium. And so he featured Crowley, and that's how he ended up coming to Crowley, and we met. I was asked if I could do a favor for him through Coach Piz, to help his baseball book, and that's how we got hooked up. And then he just started hearing my stories. When we met, he asked about my coaching and talked about Jake and Orlando, a couple of that you talked about. Yeah, sure. And then he just said, Coach, anyone ever did a book on you? And which it hadn't been done. And so it went from there, and you met him. Great. He's a great guy. He's a really sharp guy, and he's the only thing he said, Coach, he was 75 years old. He lived 900 miles away. And but he decided to go ahead and do it. And he spent a lot of time down here. He spent 2 years doing the book, interviewed 118 people for it. And I didn't realize, I had no idea how that worked, but the hours that he put in, because he was down here a lot. And he'd come in the field house at 8 o'clock in the morning, and he'd go in the back and sit at one of the desks, and he'd work there all day long, And I was like, I wasn't down here for vacation,
Right, right.
He loved eating oysters and getting in his,
the cuisine.
Some of our culture,
Yeah.
And so anyhow, he was wondering if Roman and Littlefield, who was the publishers, would publish. He was hoping they would publish this book, And when they asked him, they said, well, we've never done a book on a high school football coach. And so he had to send quite a bit more information of the book or more script from it than maybe some of the other ones that dealt with professional baseball. But we were at practice one day. It was in the playoffs. It was during the playoffs. And Coach, got something I wanted to show you when we walked inside. He'd gotten an email from the publishers that they found a book to be timely and inspiring, and so they just decided to do it. And when he had asked me about doing it, I said, Galen, if it could be written, I didn't know where you go with this,
Right.
Just a guy,
Well,
high school coach.
You're a humble coach in high school.
Who's going to read
love
that?
the sport. You'd love to
But I
impact.
said, if we could do it in a way where it could help somebody, maybe encourage some young guys who want to coach or do those types of things or whatever. So, when he came back with how he thought he would approach it, I said, well, if you would, let's try it, if you're willing to do it. So it came about, and it didn't hit me because I was like, man, I'm not too sure about, having this book about. And we were sitting at the dinner table one Sunday, and my oldest granddaughter, Scarlett, said, Coach, she said, Paul, I can't wait to get to read the book, 'cause it hit me like, they won't ever hear all these things that you're going to end up reading about, And so it kind of hit me then that, well, maybe it's worth doing that.
That's a good. That'll do it, right?
Yeah.
From the mouths of babes. So it comes in coach of a lifetime. You kind of, if you scroll through the book, I mean, there's some great stories. I mean, you got when you and Orlando go to Chicago. Orlando, I guess you were really the main father figure for him, and I think that's one of the things that, I mean, it stuck out in my mind when I read the book, and so there's that. Talk about that relationship, because you guys had quite the relationship. I mean, he was a phenomenal player. I guess technically you didn't coach him at UL, right? USL, because he was a defensive guy. But you guys had a special relationship,
right? It's a story that it's worth talking about for Orlando Thomas. He's an inspiration because of the fact he came to Crowley High when I was coaching there, obviously. So we spent 4 years together. Actually, we started having him come over as eighth graders. So, but Orlando didn't weigh 100 pounds when he got to Crowley High. He was 13 years old going to the ninth grade because his birthday's in October. So evidently he started school as a 5-year-old. And so he weighs less than 100 pounds on the freshman football team. So, how many guys you going to high school that end up being professional football players?
And not a lot.
But he was driven, to want to be really good, and fortunately, he grew into being a man that had the physical attributes and the size to be able to make it to pro football. Just because you want to do it, the good Lord sometimes just don't bless you with all the things. But he had it, but he utilized what it was that he had. And so he ends up going to sign with UL, and then I get hired back. So we ended up spending all the time together in high school, and then we spend the last 3 years together. The chapter in the book about Orlando's title 42 is because he was drafted 42nd by the Vikings. He wore number 42. He died of Lou Gehrig's disease at age 42. His father had died when he was 42.
Oh, wow.
His dad 42. And, of course, Ronnie Lott was his favorite player. And he was, I guess that may be why he chose to wear 42. But so his father was out of the pic. He had passed away.
Okay.
While Orlando was at Crowley High School. And so, getting back to UL, we got to spend a lot of time together. Like I said, I was coaching the offensive side. He was on defense. But, every day when he came to the complex, he'd come in my office. We get a chance to visit and spend a lot more time together. And he came in one day after his junior year where we had gone 8-3. That was Jake's freshman year. You know, we inserted Jake into the lineup the first game, and at the halftime, and Jake took every snap for the next 4 years. You know,
which is also another good story, by the way.
You know, and of course, probably kept me around a few more years.
Right.
Because the first year I went back, I think we won 2 games. And then Jake gets inserted in, and we go 8-3. And Orlando led the nation in interceptions that year, and he had another year to go. Came in my office, and he closed the door, and he said, "Coach, I know you'll tell me, you know, what's best for me." He said, "Do you think I should declare for the draft?" And I had no idea about really any of that, but I had a friend of mine that was in that business, and so I made a phone call, found out he probably wasn't going to go until maybe the 5th round. So what really wasn't worth, you know, doing that. But there was, because he was going to be draft eligible, you could insure him, you know. So we were able to get insurance on him in case something did happen, which I felt better about, because I'm encouraging him to go another year, you know.
Right.
And so you never know how that's going to play out.
Correct.
But fortunately, it played out well for him. He moved all the way up to early in the 2nd round. Like I said, he was the 42nd player taken, and I went to the Vikings. So, but he was really concerned, you know, agents, there's a lot of agents out there that really probably don't have the kid's best interest at heart, but they see a way to make money off of him. So he made every agent that called him call me, you know. So we kind of had collaborated on what would be the best route to go, and ended up going with a group. Mark Bartelstein, who was out of Chicago, and when Orlando got the Lou Gehrig's disease was taking over, I noticed that he had a brand new handicap van parked in his driveway, and so I went to visit. I said, "Man, what's that big time van you got?" But the agency had gifted him that van.
Oh, wow.
Handicap van. So I said, "I guess we went with the right guy."
Yeah. But and there's a story in the book where you guys he would talk to one agent, and then you would talk to like you kind of reached out to different agents, and then y'all collaborated and said, "Hey, what's here's what I saw. What did you see?" And
I
then
told him, you know, because like I said, he wanted each one. So we just decided, you write down the 3 that you like the most, and I'll at the end of the season, you know. And in fact, one time I got a call in my office. A guy said he was a newspaper guy and wanted to do a story on Orlando. So when Orlando would come in 1:30 or so every afternoon, come by my office. So I said, "Get on that phone." There was a telephone at the other end of my office. I said, "Call this guy who wants to do a story on you." And so he's on the phone maybe 30 seconds. I said, "That's not going to be much of a story." He goes, "Coach, that was an agent. He lied to you about, you know," and he told him, I said, I don't have anything to do with the guy, you know. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that go on. But actually, when we wrote down our top choices, we had 2 the same. So I had one different than what he had, but the first one he wanted to visit was Mark Bartelstein in Chicago, and right away he just felt real comfortable, and he ended up. And like I said, you know, I was with Mark. He flew down for the funeral. He had his secretary that took care of Orlando. And they were, to this day, they're still taking care of his financials. Some of it would help and
stuff. Yeah.
So
very. Yeah, I think y'all went with the right choice there.
The right guy.
Yeah. There's a bunch of different other good stories in this book. It's Coach of a Lifetime. The story of Louis Cook Jr. I mean, look, the foreword was written by Nick Saban. You know Nick Saban pretty well. I mean, he recruited your son, your oldest son, right?
With Jeff.
Your second. Yeah, that's right. So your second, he recruited Jeff, and Jeff played for him for a year, right? Yeah. So I guess that's where the relationship started.
Well, I knew him before when Jeff was a sophomore. Is when Nick came to LSU, but we had Cade Como, who had already committed to LSU. So Nick's his second day in Louisiana, he came to Notre Dame because he wanted to seal the commitment, confirm the commitment from Cade. So I know he went to John Curtis the first day he was here, and then came west. So I got to meet him. You know, I was one of the first guys to actually get to meet him. And so it kind of, I guess he just, from that, started. And then, he actually had offered me a position to go to LSU, which a lot of people don't, I've never really said a whole lot about it.
Right.
He wanted to he did create this position. It was kind of for a high school liaison type, where you would deal with the camps and the clinics and kind of be a go-between but for LSU athletics and the high school coaches. Right. And he was looking, really for a retired coach. Well, so everybody's, Louis, I retired from public, I took my public school retirement, but I wasn't retired from working.
Right.
I couldn't afford to do that.
Right.
And but he created the position and asked me about, it really wasn't any. I wanted to keep coaching, and so he asked me who I thought, and Charles Baglio, Coach Baggs was head coach at Independence for like 30 years, and now he had retired, and he was just as a part-time sporting goods salesman. So I said, Coach, you need to put Baggs in that spot. So he'd probably be better than I would be in doing those types of things. And Baggs did it for 20 years. He did it for Nick. He stayed with Les Miles, kept him on, and then Ed kept him on. And he didn't retire until Brian Kelly. When Brian Kelly came in, Baggs had done it for 20 years.
Wow.
And it was a great experience for him. Of course, he put a couple of national championship rings on his finger while he was doing that. But he and I were really close. We probably talked almost every day, until he was killed in a car accident a couple of years ago. But anyhow, yeah. So yeah, we got to, Nick and I got to know one another, pretty good. And he actually, Fritz Welter, Fritz's son DJ played for LSU.
Yeah.
Fritz had written a book. And then he kind of was dabbling with wanting to do another one, and so he and I actually started talking about it. And he's the one set up a visit to Tuscaloosa, and Nick told me to give him 15 minutes. So Fritz drives to Tuscaloosa from here, and they ended up spending probably a little over an hour though. He got to talking.
Yeah.
And he had 3 pages of notes. He transcribed from his visit, three pages of their talk, and Nick had told him, use it, however you want.
Gotcha.
And but then Fritz wasn't able to continue the project.
Gotcha.
Jobs and things that he was in attorneys in the DA's office and those types of things. So it wasn't something like I was pushing to have.
Right.
When he dropped, we never really spoke a whole lot about it anymore. Didn't come up until Galen asked me about it, and I had the notes from his conversation with Nick.
Yeah.
So Galen contacted Alabama, and Nick agreed. Yeah, he sent him what it would look like, and so Coach Saban agreed to go ahead and use it. So that's how that came about.
Nice. So does Coach Saban have a copy? You sent him a copy? Or Galen
we did send one.
Yeah, that's cool.
There,
that's cool. So a bunch of great stories in here, obviously. And then I think one of the other cool things is the chapter about the priests that have come out of your program, and that's really a kind of a cool aspect as well. That's happened.
Well, Galen had asked me the first day we were talking about it, and he said, Coach, you closed in on 50 years of coaching. What's kept you in this, for so long? I said, well, Galen, what other profession is there where you get to coach all these young men that go into every walk of life? So I got guys that are officers in the military. They own their own businesses. You got doctors, you got teachers, coaches, accountants. Everything. I said, even priests. I said, I've coached several guys now that are ordained priests, and now we're up to 5. Since I've been at Notre Dame, that have come through our program that are now priests. So yeah, he kind of thought that was pretty interesting as well. So it's we've been very fortunate to have a lot of good kids come through that program.
Yeah, good stuff. So if it's still available, right, on Amazon and all that good stuff.
And we have some at school.
You can go to Notre Dame, I guess, or reach out to them. But Roman and Littlefield is the publisher there, and I know it's a good read. It's very. It's pretty cool. I mean, the name of the book is Coach of a Lifetime, and you have I guess Orlando gave you a trophy, and the trophy's on the backside of this.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? Yeah, there it is. The trophy's on the backside, and that's in your office.
But Orlando, you always, wanted, Coach, what you need? What can I get you? I said, I just want you to be taken care, take care of your business the right way. And when you finish playing, whatever you do could be a hobby because you're going to make enough money if you handle it right. And then one day he walked in with that little statuette. And so I had it kind of in the corner of my office. And Galen had been around for several months. And he actually read about it in an article. And he walked in, he goes, Coach, I read this about a statuette Orlando gave you, but it says it's in your office. Well, I've never seen it. We also had a Viking cap autographed by Orlando, so I kind of hung it on the statue, and I put it in the corner of my office. He goes, "That's about right. You so humble, you stick everything in the corner." But
it's still there too. It's still there.
The caption on the little statuette is "Coach of a Lifetime," and he says, "Thanks for your friendship and whatever." So when he saw it again, he goes, well, that's going to be the title. That's how it came about with the title of the book.
Good stuff.
But anyhow,
all right.
It was interesting.
Well, there you go. You can go search it up. It's all wherever books are sold. There is Coach of a Lifetime. We're going to take a break. We'll be back.
Sports Chat with George Faust.
Welcome back to Sports Chat. Hey, everybody. I'm George Faust, host of Sports Chat. We are honored to have Notre Dame head football coach Louis Cook. And Coach Cook, appreciate your time as always. Great chatting with you. I could sit here and chat with you for a long time. In fact, usually I do especially when Parker was playing for you. I'd pop in during the week and I'd be like, "Hey, what's the game plan?" I'd be like, "Hey, let's run this." No, just kidding. I didn't call it. Although one time you did ask me, I did say, "Hey, Coach, let me call the first play," and you go, "Well, what would you call?" And I was like, "Double reverse pass," and you're like, no, I don't think so. I don't know if we can do that this time. But
George, this year would have been a good year to call the first play.
Oh,
because
I got it. Hand it to Jokum.
Hand it to Jokum.
What an unbelievable talent that young man was.
I'm still having people, trying to find information that's ever happened.
No,
before.
So here's what you're talking about. He scored in the first play of 6 games. 6 games, the very first play, Jokum takes it to the house.
And we're not talking like 5 yards.
No, we're talking 80.
65, 80,
right.
85.
Yes. Unbelievable.
Yeah. The only bad thing in the whole deal that exposes how dumb I am as a coach, because I didn't give it to him the first play every game. So he did it like 6 out of 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Even though we played 13 games or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I should have given it to him all 13 times, but no.
No,
you're
right.
That was pretty fun. That was fun. Unbelievable.
Well,
really.
In the state semifinal, I mean, you have that inside the 5 or whatever, and I was up there in the booth, and I'm like, you got to give it to Joke. I mean, you ride or die with your guy, man. I mean, this guy's carried you the whole way.
Yeah, he carried us. Yeah.
And it just didn't work out. But it was a phenomenal season. It's definitely hard to watch a group of guys work so hard and get to the brink of that, and all of a sudden it just comes apart. But on what seems to be a one play, but it's not. It's never one play.
No,
It's a what is the word I'm looking for? It's a collection of plays that happen. But you've had that experience of winning the state championship numerous times. 6? You've been there. What's even more impressive is, I think, I said this the other day. The Masters just finished up, and I was talking to my son Harrison, and we were talking about golf, and he's kind of into golf right now, and so I was like, oh, that's cool, man. We'll start playing a little bit if you like it. And I was talking about Jack Nicklaus, and I've actually had the opportunity to interview Jack Nicklaus before, which is one of the great parts of my job. You know, at some point you get to talk to superstars, and Jack Nicklaus, much like yourself, very humble man. But I was telling him about how Jack Nicklaus, he won the Masters at 46 years old, 1986. That doesn't happen. Blah blah blah. And he goes, he was talking about how I lost my train of thought. He was talking about how man, he's such a great golfer, but man, he only won the Masters, whatever. I'm like, dude, first off, not only is he a great champion, I got my train of thought back. Here's the thing. Look at how many runner-ups he has. He has more runner-ups than he does Masters, or majors.
Yeah.
And I'm like, think about that for a second. So that means you have to be in contention that 37 times, 38 times, whatever it was, he was in the final group or had a chance to win that tournament. And I said, so the parallel here is this. You guys at Notre Dame have the same situation. You've won 6, but you had a stretch there where you lost it as well.
Been there 10 times. And 13 in all, because I was, fortunately at Crowley High we made 3
right,
trips.
Sure.
And it's funny. I love to listen. When you hear on the sportscast, the guy, he just can't seem to win the big one. You know how many big games you got to win to get to that big game? I mean, people ask me all the time, what are some of your more memorable games? And the first ones that come to my mind are not the finals. It's getting there. It's the win against Broadmoor in '89 at Crowley High to make our first trip. The win at Brobridge, in 2000 to get to the championship game. 2003, we go to Parkview Baptist, and they got Beckwith and Lyle Hitt. I think they had 7 D1 guys on the field, and we beat Parkview at their place in 2003 to get to the championship game. Now we spent a lot of energy and we lose to Lutcher the next week, 15-7. But just those getting there, those to me are huge games. And so you're right. It's it kind of goes unnoticed, but those runner-ups, especially in golf, in the majors, it's not, you're not getting there very often. If you do, you got to relish that opportunity.
So speaking of that, I mean, you've been there a couple of times, and believe me, I did have a point, and I was maneuvering through it. And the point was this: last year in the high school football season, your son Stu, he coaches at Iowa, and Iowa won their first ever state championship, or first in a while anyway, first ever state championship for the Yellow Jackets, and he's on that staff and had an integral part in that. What was that like for you as a dad to be able to see your son who won a state championship as a player, and now he's a part of our coaching staff?
I was more happy for him than when we would win him for myself.
Yeah.
But the thing about Iowa had never been to the semifinals, George, until about 4 or 5 years ago, and they lost to North DeSoto in the semifinals. 2 years later, they got beat by North DeSoto again. I think the quarters, and then I was at the game in Franklinton 2 years ago when they were about a play away from going to the Dome that year, but they lost. And then this year, they beat a good Bell Chase team, which I saw Bell Chase on film. Man, their defensive front was wow, and then they meet North DeSoto again, who had knocked them out twice in the previous couple of years, and 50-43. What a shootout, and a great game. And I was so proud of Stu, and I know how happy. But to see that whole community, it brought me back to our first trip in 2000 Notre Dame, or the '89 when we Crowley High made it. I mean, almost the whole town shuts down, and it's such a neat experience. And to sit there, I was offered a field pass when I got there and ran into some of the guys I know. Hey, Coach, I said, I want to sit in the stands and watch this game. I I wanted just to watch, and I sat up in the stands and went down for a few minutes at half, but it was so neat, and Stu, I don't know how he did it. They beat Lutcher in the quarterfinals, and the next morning now we're both getting ready for the semi,
Right? Yeah.
We got Calvary Baptist and they got Bell Chase, and so Saturday's a big day, to go get ready for the game, and he calls me at 6 a.m. To see if we could go pick up his three kids because they're headed to the hospital to have number 4. At 1 o'clock that Saturday afternoon, the day after the game, he and Marie have their 4th child.
Gotcha.
So here he's got a newborn and trying to get, got the 3 others, 7, 6, and 2, and so you got to get them through. But yeah, so the kids roll with us. We had the 3, took them to the game with us, and Marie was still back home with the newborn. And, so yeah, it was a crazy week, but it ended in a joyous fashion.
Yeah, sure enough, it would have been really cool if you guys were there as well.
Man,
Y'all
like
both
you
won
said,
in the same weekend. That'd been crazy.
We would have played the Thursday night game. They played Friday.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, it would have been pretty cool, but
didn't work out that way for the Pios. Well, let's talk. We're going to take a break. We'll come back and we're going to wrap up the show as we'll kind of look ahead to the district and the season coming up for the Notre Dame Pios. It's been a pleasure to have you, Coach, and don't go away. We have more Sports Chat coming up.
Sports Chat with George Faust.
We are back on Sports Chat. Thanks so much for taking some time to check us out. You can do that on the KLFY Plus app and figure out how to get that. We've got all kinds of different ways: Fire TV, Apple TV, all that good stuff. And you can also go to klfy.com to figure out how to download the KLFY Plus app. And Coach Cook of the Notre Dame Pios is with us. As we wrap up, Coach, we look ahead to the upcoming season for you guys. The 2026 season kind of switches districts every 2 years. It kind of gets reclassified or recalibrated, if you will. And you guys We'll start the season. Usually, in the past, it's for the past 4 years. I think it's been Southside. That's not happening this year. You guys kind of making a move and have a little different start to the season.
Right. Yeah, we've gone with them for several years. It's been really good, but their program has really taken off, and there's it was getting harder and harder for us to match up with those guys, and they do a really good job over there, and they got a really nice program, but. Yeah, Northwest, which has had some really good football teams the last few years, we've been talking to them for several years about wanting to play. And so we'll start off with Northwest and then Church Point. Coach Poole is, I guess, looking to, upgrade his program. He had a good year last year, but I don't think he was pleased with the seeding. And sometimes you get caught in district. You don't get a lot of points from your district, but our district's changed, George. We were with LCA and Lafayette Renaissance for the last several years, and Lafayette Renaissance jumped all the way to 4A. That school was just really growing. Yeah. And then LCA, they shifted them down to go south towards Catholic and New Iberia and Jeanneret in that area. So we did pick up Kinder, with us now, and Basile moved up to 2A.
Yeah.
So they ended up
landing. And they usually have a decent program every now and again. They're always kind of pushing.
So it'd be a little bit. We still have Lake Arthur and Welsh, with us. So it'll be interesting. We have an odd number, so you have a bye where our bye fell week 6, and we picked up Abbeville. They wanted to play. They've been improving a little bit, and then lo and behold. If Brent Indes decides to move back and where he lands in Abbeville.
Which there's a chapter in the book about Brent Indes and the relationship that Coach Cook has with him. And
so that circus will begin, start over again. But no, it's still a challenge. We have Turlings, which, they've been getting after us pretty good the last few years. Catholic and New Iberia, we have some, really great games with those guys. And, they won the state championship just 2 years ago. and then Cecilia, which they won a state championship 2 years. So we got some challenges on that schedule as we always have, but it helps you to be better, and that's what we're really trying to do, to learn as much about our team as we can.
As we wrap up here, I just want to ask a quick question. It popped into my head as you were talking about it. The year my son was there, the senior year, you guys had what, I think 26 seniors, and you lost 26. And then this past season, is it
17?
17. Yeah. And then, I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, were you able to replenish that a little bit with regards to the team, and how are you looking? Just kind of a quick overview here.
This year we had less seniors, so it opens up spots for more juniors.
I got you.
And a couple of sophomores. So we actually have more kids returning this year than we've had for a long time. Offensive, we had 3 offensive linemen back, and we started 2 juniors and a sophomore. We have a running back coming back on offense. A tight end, H-back type guy, and Gabe Smith. Defensively, we have 4 guys that were in the rotation this year, playing on the front line, 2 linebackers, and a couple of secondary guys. So we do have a little nucleus of experienced guys coming back. It's just hope they continue to get better and play well, and then. And it always comes down to the guy pulling the trigger a lot of times too, Yeah. So, if we can get consistent at that position, we'll have a chance to try to make a run.
Good stuff. Coach Cook, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate you spending a little time with us.
It's always fun, George. I appreciate you allowing me to have the opportunity.
Absolutely. Coach Cook is the head coach at Notre Dame High School. He's also got a book written about him. It's Coach of a Lifetime. You can check that out wherever you buy books. Galen White is the author, forward by Nick Saban. So you love him or you hate him, pick it up and check it out. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Sports Chat. We'll see you next time right here on Sports Chat.